It is the 14th of the 2nd, 2026, Saturday. Happy Valentine's to each and every single one of you out there celebrating. Hug somebody that you love shortly hereafter, therefore. But between now and then, over the next 20 minutes or so, we've got to talk about some F1, for there are very many F1 centric threads at which we need to put. We'll talk about Maximilian Verstappen and some of his automotive pugilistic genius, tax avoidance as far as the ERS, mention no names, MGUK. So too we'll talk about Aston Martin, because I've got something that I want to get off my chest as far as Adrian. As brilliant as that dude is, Houston, Aston Martin, we have ourselves a gazillion problems. Aston Martin are in some big trouble, and it's not like Adrian didn't warn us, talking about personnel over capital investment over the past couple of weeks. So too Fernando Alonso at the livery launch was like, don't expect much for us in Australia, but the extent to which they were managing for expectation, I don't think was commensurate with their underperformance, how far they are behind the rest of the pack. So too we'll talk about sandbagging Charles Leclerc. I will pay a clip. In the first instance, however, you guys need to see this. This is important. Remember, we talked about Max Verstappen doing some clever stuff. The guys and girls over at the race, Ed Straw, John Noble et al., they said that sitting and listening at turn 10, you could hear Max Verstappen doing two things. In the first instance, the double downshift, going from 5-4-3 and then chilling out in 2 for a little bit with a view to blip, to expedite the rate at which the MGUK is charging. And of course, why not in 2026? That's the sort of weird things that you're going to see these drivers do. Mention no names, Lyco. We all criticised Ferrari for having to lift and coast last year. Well, it turns out that they were geniuses. They were just preparing their drivers for the inevitability of 2026, for they will all be lifting and coasting all over the shop. What is that, ladies and gentlemen of the F1 jury? What is that? Is this F1 snowflake, or is this F1 proper? Is this Formula E, or is this the same series that Ayrton Senna and fire-breathing dragons like Nigel Mansell and Prost and Jim Clark and Nelson Piquet used to drive in? You tell me, because I can't tell at the moment. Neither can Maximilian Verstappen. That's why this dude is spending 100 gazillion years in first gear. He's looking to charge the bloody battery and make sure he doesn't run out of poke on the straights. This, ladies and gentlemen of the F1 jury, is absolutely bonkers. That we're here is daft. You're watching Bathurst Easy J. I don't hate it, mate. It's Valentine's Day, and if indeed there are cars out on the track, then you guys should be indulging in it. I thought this was brilliant. Again, courtesy of F1 Big Data Holiness on Twitter. It shows materially exactly how much time as a percentage of the whole that Max Verstappen, for some say soon to be 5-time champion, is spending in first gear at Bahrain. And conversely, when you look at it, look how much time Lewis Hamilton is spending more than Max Verstappen in 7th. There's something going on that's a bit tricky here. Now, which one do you prefer? I prefer the old school, but maybe I'm an old grizzled F1 vet. Recession settings, 2008 subprime. I get it. Maybe I'm too old, too grey, too long in the tooth. But something tells me that F1's going to lose itself some fans at the altar of perceived modernisation. This isn't F1, is it really? Surely. And some say that Max Verstappen was complaining, just moaning, saying that this is an F1, this is Formula E, that we're going to have to do something about this, otherwise he's going to go away, that he might retire potentially or have more fun in NLS 24-hour of Nürburgring. As some said, mention no names, Lando Norris, current champion 2.0, the incumbent, that if Max wants to retire, then he should just go away. Have at it, sir. That we're getting paid a gazillion pounds, says Lando. And if Max wants to have a moan, then feel free, chap. That he's the only one that's speaking this sort of stuff, that everybody else is enjoying the car. Well, according to Scott Mitchell-Malm over at the race, that's not quite true. And we love a cheeky debunk on this channel, since we will never ever sacrifice truth nor objectivity at the altar of any cognitive bias worthy of the moniker. Order clear.
Driver told me today that Max spoke for a lot of the drivers in terms of his criticism about the engines and what all of that stuff is. A lot of the drivers won't say this because there is a little bit of a desire, shall we say, from F1 not for drivers not to be going out constantly just talking down the new rules massively before we've even got started and so on. And a lot of drivers want to respect that. Drivers that are particularly opinionated and have a lot of clout, i.e. a Max Verstappen or a Lewis Hamilton, can do that, whereas a driver at the back end of the grid can't.
Oh, the humanity. This is chaos from the boys and girls over at the race. This means, therefore, that somebody's telling porkies, Lando Norris talking like it's only Max Verstappen singing from this Formula E hymn sheet, whereas a gazillion drivers, including Sir Lewis, are saying that this isn't Formula One. What are we doing? Change your fudging rules. Oh, and by the way, if we're having the conversation under the aegis of which one of these teams and drivers therefore have the best chance of winning the championship, who was sandbagging, who was going balls out, lest we forget that Kimi Antonelli actually had the quickest sim race run. Not Lewis Hamilton, if we're fact checking oneself, but nevertheless, this is important because Ted Kravitz said that Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari potentially have the best car. Charles Leclerc to that responded this way.
Everybody's throwing each other's the ball of who is the fastest. I don't believe in any of what they say, and I don't believe in Lando's reaction. I think we've seen few things on the Mercedes engine that are very impressive, and they are not showing any of that. And when I say any of that, we are speaking about quite a lot. Red Bull have shown a bit more than what Mercedes have shown, and they are very impressive as well, especially more on the electrical side of things, with the recharge and the amount they can deploy on each single lap is very impressive. So yeah, I feel like Mercedes is more the raw power that is very impressive, and probably more the electrical side of things on the Red Bull power unit.
And there he is, modern day Journalese, saying that the team to look out for when we get to Australia in a few weeks' time has a name, and its name is Mercedes, that they have the whip hand at the altar of design synchronicity. Lest we forget, in the 2026 rule and reg set, it is power unit focused, but that doesn't mean that you don't need to be holistic in the way that you've built the car. Adrian Newey, we'll talk to in a minute, been a bit techie as he always is, a bit ambitious with the gearbox and its placing, with a view to exacerbate the rate at which you get clean air to the rear of the car. Yet and still, it feels like Mercedes have leveraged the privilege that comes with being a works team. What's going on, Julian? I hope you're good. Percival is confident. He does appear confident, doesn't he, this modern day Journalese chat? As well he might do, because this could be his last and Lewis's last season at Scuderia Ferrari, if indeed they haven't built the car. Lest we forget Aston Martin, who is circling around this chap already. Some say Charles Leclerc has had conversations with. What about Red Bull? What about Mercedes? They will all want to sign this dude, who some say is point to point the quickest of all of the 22 drivers currently on the grid. Not named the Max Verstappen, of course. Well, it's a subject. And the Honda PU. Go on then, let's talk about Aston Martin. I've been wanting to get this off my chest. Let me say this in the first instance. I remember having a conversation with a friend in 2022 who didn't know who Adrian Newey was, who hadn't read the book How to Build a Car, in which he talks about all of the facets and nuance, the nooks and crannies of how to build a quick market-leading race car, not just F1. Because remember, Adrian Newey is multifaceted. Do you know what I mean? He spent some time in America building Indy cars, if I recall correctly. And then he came over to F1 and plied his hand. He's not just an aerodynamicist. Adrian Newey is a god-tier performance and race engineer and engine engineer. He knows everything. And that's why in 22, so many people were saying, well, in a brand new rule and reg set, of course, Adrian Newey was going to build himself and Red Bull a god tier car. Because if past his prologue, you recall in 2010, who built the Red Bull car using which Sebastian Vettel won 4 championships back to back, 2010 through 2013. Similar thing, late 90s. Who was the one that built the car that Mika Hakkinen dethroned an onrushing Michael Schumacher, who was about to go back to back between 2000 and 2004? Of course, it was Adrian Newey. How about in the early 90s? 1992, of course, it was Nigel Mansell. Alain Prost followed him in 1993 with active suspension, all because of Adrian Newey's God-tier F1 mind. And I say all of that to say this. If there was such a thing as guarantee in success in F1, in aerodynamicist form, it would have a name, and its name is Adrian Newey. However, here is the principal point of contention. Guarantee of success in Formula One. There exists no such thing, ladies and gentlemen, particularly if Adrian Newey doesn't have the lead time and run rate requisite to get some God-tier genius work done. Lest we forget, he only joined in March of last year. How long's that? 9 months to turn around the bloody car. That's not long enough. And you see that drip feed by dint of the fact that they turn up late for the private behind closed door test at Barcelona. Adrian Newey told us as much at the livery launch. We didn't have enough time. The Honda thing is always going to be a bottleneck. So some time-ish are they in terms of their F1 endeavour. Yeah, they just built a God-tier PU for Red Bull powertrains. But this is different now. They've been out the game for a while. If you're talking about engineering knowledge that they can carry forth into this rule and regs, that they're a gazillion percentage points behind Mercedes, and that has to count for something. But it's not just the PU. Some are saying a gazillion different things for which Aston Martin will need to fix, and Fernando Alonso is not too happy because it feels like Teodoro Edgar. It feels like on Fernando Alonso's final tour, he won't have himself the machinery commensurate capable of winning races and therefore championships, and that makes me sad. Let me show you this. This is important. In fact, before we go to that, let me set it up properly. Your boy's not giving the proper intro. So you will hear Ted Kravitz talking about Adrian Newey being team principal. Now, I've raised questions myself. Team principal, Adrian Newey. Adrian Newey is not a team principal, not in the modern day sense. Nominally, potentially, because he wants carte blanche, right? He wants to be able to rubber stamp any decision. If he's fallen out with Andy Cowell, jettison him away, get him out of the factory, go to another team, go away from here, Andy Cowell, because Adrian Newey will make the decisions. But a team principal proper needs to manage expectations and relationships, sit before the world's accredited F1 media. That's what a team principal, just like Toto's done so brilliantly down the years, and like Christian Horner used to do. Curry favour, manage expectation. Christian Horner, lest we forget, when he was team principal of the Bulls that are red, was the only team principal to hold a dinner annually for all of the accredited F1 journalists and media. That's the extent to which Christian Horner went to manage relationships. Adrian Newey is not that type of leader. However, Ted Kravitz speaks to this. He says that Adrian Newey understands that there are problems, multitudinous problems over at Aston Martin, and he's speaking to them, rallying the troops, doing his best to solve for them in real time. The picture on the right hand side of your screen that you'll see in a couple of seconds is Adrian Newey troubleshooting in real time for a car that is nothing if not an absolute SH1T box. The words you will hear from Ted Kravitz over at Sky Sports F1, talking about what Adrian Newey is doing to be the leader that Aston Martin so desperately need. Roll the clip.
The story, one of the stories of the test, really, and if we've learnt something in this second test of the season, Bahrain Test 1, it's that Adrian Newey's first car doesn't mean it's going to be a winning car, especially with the Honda power unit that, by their own admission, is behind. By Adrian Newey's own admission, the car is behind. By the team's own admission, their first half of the year is going to be challenging, difficult. But at the moment, Aston Martin, we've learnt, are the 10th quickest team behind Audi.
Something interesting you told me. You learned that
10th. Did he say 10th? Oh, the humanity. That is chaos, ladies and gentlemen. 10 of 11 and an Adrian Newey design car. Oh, the humanity.
that and people have been questioning how effective a sort of man manager Adrian Newey might be, because we associate him being hidden away in his drawing room. But apparently, well, you can say that he called a meeting and
he had a big team the big team briefing. I mean, listen, yeah, at a big team briefing, apparently he was extremely positive and motivating to everybody and reassuring, saying, look, you know, what Lance Stroll was saying, that we're 4 seconds off the pace. That might be true, but we've got a lot of things that we can get right quickly, and I know what we need to get right on all sides, whether it's gearbox, Honda engine, chassis aerodynamics, understanding that, and then energy management system with batteries, etc., etc. That's not to say that we don't have the, you know, the fuel and everything else that's new for this year. But Adrian Newey, well, let's put it this way: Sir Frank Williams once called Adrian Newey the most competitive man, including drivers, in Formula One.
But it's,
and he's apparently picking that team up and saying, "Don't worry, everybody, it's not there yet, but I know what to do."
Oh, the humanity. So, John, you're an absolute legend. I wish I could do my best Birmingham accent like Mrs. John Perry. Salud. And listen, happy Valentine's Day. So, too, I need to read this one out. Sorry, Cameron. Remember the McLaren MP4 18 that never ran? That was a new design. I mean, he doesn't bat 1,000, does this Adrian Newey chap, Kronos. But he comes very close. This might be one of those ones that he missed, you know what I mean? This feels like a humongous miss. Not only is it a distant 4.5 seconds behind is where Aston Martin is. This is pant-wettingly salacious. It's a huge story. Adrian Newey failing. Oh, the humanity. And by the way, failing and how? Check this out. And again, this comes from the legend that is Natchez98 on the Twitters. He says that there are problems in summary as far as the AMR26 is concerned. It is overweight. It is underpowered. The gearbox desync, again, reliability issues as far as the gearbox is concerned. Cooling, bad ICE, 50 brake horsepower down at the altar of Honda. Vibrations, low revs, fewer revs, no setup, no good setup. Aero is bad. Oh, the humanity. Tell me where this car is good. Do you know what I mean? And I was under the illusion that Adrian Newey designed himself an aerodynamic beast efficiency at each, because it looked incredible, right, when we saw it at Barcelona. However, people are now saying that even the aero is dog. I tell you what, this is chaos. Let me read out this again. So we're talking to the overweight thing, right? Honda, the PU in and of itself, everybody says is overweight and underpowered. However, the car is close to 40 kilograms higher than the minimum weight. What are we doing here? They're not going to resolve this before Melbourne. You bet your bottom dollar they're not 40 kilograms. You're going to have to drive with like 3 wheels or something to save that much weight. What are we doing here? Like, this needs to be, I mean, this is Ozempic settings, right, for this AMR26. They've had to reduce the engine power because otherwise the gearbox would destroy itself. Do you remember that the first test when we saw them, they had the blue lights at the back? That was to show that they were running it on a super slow engine mode to warn the oncoming driver that the car was going so bloody slow, so that they didn't Franco Colapinto it into him. I tell you what, this is insane. Biggest story to come out of testing thus far is this. Oh, and by the way, let me show you this. This is a visual representation of the chaos over there at Aston Martin. Of course, what does this show? Average speed or quicker speed from each of the teams and power units. Therefore, Red Bull racing at the top due to what we talked about earlier. Max Verstappen doing his double downshift thing and holding first gear longer than normal or at all into the all. The now notorious turn 10. Difficult, is it? But they normally take second gear through there. Max is doing it in first with a view to expedite the rate at which the MGUK charges. 344 kilometers per hour then from Max. Let's go through this and I'll take you to Aston Martin, Ferrari, Haas, Cadillac 332, Mercedes 337, McLaren, Williams, Alpine, Audi. Where are Aston Martin, ladies and gentlemen of the F1 jury? Where are Aston Martin? Well, here's where Aston Martin are. Oh, the humanity. Right at the bottom of the middle. What are we doing here, chat? 326 kilometers per hour. That, ladies and gentlemen, is chaos. Shameful, could one say? Unexpected, abso-flipping-lutely if it's an Adrian Newey project. But Honda, we've come to expect this, right? They are sometime-ish in terms of the way that they run their F1 sporting endeavour. I want to show you this as well. In fact, I'll read this out because this is important. This is why this is chaos. We've spoken for the longest time that it's a shame that Sir Lewis in his final tours, again, lest we forget, 41 years old, Father Time is undefeated, undisputed, pound for pound, has never lost a round in this, a young man's game in F1. The same can be said for Fernando Alonso, who's now, what, 44 years old. How many years has Fernando got left? 1 or less, depending on who you talk to. Now, BBC wrote an article where they talked about the extent to which the Honda power unit is costing Aston Martin time, 1.5 seconds a lap. Therefore, 37% of the delta, the quantum between Aston Martin and the race lead, you can attribute to the Honda PU. Here's why that's important, therefore, ladies and gentlemen of the F1 jury, because this will feel like deja vu for one Fernando Alonso, right? Lest we forget, GP2 engine, GP2, not too many moons ago, all the way over there at McLaren. And here's why this feels a bit tragic. So many F1, so many Spanish fans and the Alonso contingent will have been hoping that Honda and Aston Martin could deliver on their promise. This is the Adrian Newey car, for Pete's sake. Give Fernando Alonso the car by dint of the relationship between Newey and Alonso. Alonso being the man that Newey said that he always dreamed of working with. Give him, therefore, if a fairy tale is a thing, give him, therefore, the car using which he can challenge once again for a championship. Lest we forget that the last time we saw Alonso fighting for a championship was when? I mean, 2012, maybe 2017, he wasn't too bad. Before then, 2005, 2006. So if you're a Fernando Alonso fan, here's why that's important. It was 20 years ago now that you saw Fernando Alonso lift silverware. He has only won 32 races in his bloody 25-year career now in Formula One. That is chaos. He's massively underachieved because he's made the right decisions at the wrong time. This is why when we're talking about Max Verstappen moving to another team as at 2027, this is why this decision is so important, because you don't want to be another Fernando Alonso. Because I would put forth my supposition this way. It is a shame. You wanted to see Fernando Alonso do like he did in 07, which is race with Sir Lewis Hamilton. Do you know what I mean? Throughout 2014, 15, 16, 17, because he is that damn good a driver. Race IQ on a different level. You've seen the things that he's capable of. Speak to engineers and they will help you understand the way that this dude's brain works. He's the one to be looking at the big screen to understand what the guys are doing behind him and in front of him. He'll know off the top of the dome the delta to 2 decimal places in front of him and behind him. He's the one, is Fernando Alonso, the god tier F1 mind, who was able to calculate exactly how long he needed to wait for in the pit in Hungary to just about pass the line and go on to complete his own hot lap, all the while detrimenting Lewis Hamilton behind him just enough to where he didn't. He is a god tier F1 mind, and F1 is a far poorer placer, I would put forth, for not having him competing for races and championship. Oh, the humanity.